thanks for coming. Let's start. We were waiting for the president, and he'll come, he'll stop by at least, but he has a meeting at 6, so he'll have to leave soon anyways. I'm gonna present you Ambassador Luis Palma first, and he'll talk for about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll have a small or short QA session. And then afterwards we have a reception in the mail room on the 2nd floor, and you're all invited. And I hope you can all make it to the reception too. So we'll get to socialize and have some drinks and food. So we're very honored to have the ambassador of Chile in Turkey, Luis Palma, who is an historian. I learned that today. And so he's going to give us a talk today on the actual political situation and the economy of Chile. And as you all know from our classes, Chile has gone through a very drastic changes in the last 2 decades or so. He'll talk about some of those changes and the consequences of those changes. We're very honored to have you here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation, and good afternoon to everybody. And I'm very pleased to be in this campus of the university. So I will try to do my presentation very briefly, and I hope it's clear for you. I must tell you something. By profession, I'm a teacher, and by career, I'm a diplomat. So if you have any doubt, please ask it. I'm used to do. A student can ask immediately any question. Sometimes I prefer not at the end of the presentation. So don't hesitate and say, I want to say something or to make any comment, do it, please. Because I'm used to this and I like this interconnection. Well, let's start. So first we have a map in order to, because it's important to know the geography of what we are talking about. So Chile, you know, is from north to south. It's a large country, 4,200 kilometers from north to south. And you have the other countries like Brazil, Argentina, but that's South America. Well, what says since 1940, I don't want to read what says, you know, but you can read it. But what I want to say that during the 30s and the 40s, all the Latin American countries want to develop their own industries in order to be more independent from the rest of the world. So they developed iron, steel, copper, coal. So for that reason, during the 40s, what says, they try to protect their industries. And for that reason, they put a lot of tariff in order to protect their national industries. To have an idea how was this protection for their industry, I have these figures there. You know, they're very, very high, the tariff. You know, look, Brazil was 168, Chile 138. So everything that was in our country was poor quality, and what was imported was very expensive. I remember when I was young, to have a jeans, a Wrangler Lee, was very expensive. I couldn't afford to have a jeans, you know, because there was a lot of tariff in order to protect very bad pantaloons, you know. Well, beside those, yes, please go ahead.
Why do you think Uruguay has a not very low, but relative to the others, it has just 13% of tariff per year? What was their idea to have lower tariff rates?
Well, in case the Uruguay, for example, because Uruguay, they didn't have a big industry. They have to receive everything. So the people have to live and to, you know, that's a very practical reason, you know. Yeah. Well, besides, they had a great fiscal deficit, those countries, you know. They had high inflation. The money was devaluating constantly. When there was all this problem, economic problem, there was political ones, and then a lot of coup d'etat. So there was a very unstable political situation in those countries. at the beginning. Yeah, please, the other one. Yeah. Well, what happened with this political situation and these economic policies? You know, in the 80s, the growth was very, very negative for those countries in Latin America. And the unemployment was very high. And the most dangerous situation was this one, unequal income distribution, because there was very small group of the societies very rich, and the rest of the people was very poor. And that was a very, very dangerous situation for the country, for the political stability, you know, when they have a lot of people that don't have nothing, and a small group has a lot of money, and also they have the power, the political power. And so came the 90s, when the Cold War was ended, came the globalization process. So most of the countries in South America say, well, we have to change. World is changing, why we don't have to change? So they were more open, and they reconsidered their economic policies. For that situation, they accepted foreign investment, they lowered the tariff, and they began to deregulate and remove controls over the economy, and try to reduce the fiscal deficits as well. But of course, there was an opposition in those countries. You know, the political parties, they were ruling the country, say, well, now we will lose control. The trade unions, when some countries, they have a big institution, like, for example, railways, you know, or ports. Most of those governments recruit people from their own parties, and they were members of those parties, and they also belong to this structure of the political, of the government. So there was a big cabinet, big ministries, big companies that were not producing, and they was recruiting people in order to pay some favors. So when in 90s they want this government, they wanted to put control over the infrastructure. A lot of people say no, because we can lose our job. You know, they were not producing, but they were receiving money from the government. So there was a struggle between this new way of think and the opposition, no? To say no, we want to remain as we were before. Next one. So, in order to overcome those problems, appears in South America some populist government, and they call it new populist government. They start criticize the globalization and the capitalism. They say all this problem that we have in other countries, the poverty, is because capitalismo, imperialismo, and globalization. Sometimes there is some true, but not completely. Sometimes you have to see what is your own problem, you know. So most of this government, the new populist government, they say, no, it's not our problem. The problem is coming from abroad. So they argued that in order to improve the social condition, and they want to reduce the poverty, they say the states must again control the society. Coming back to this old times, please. And with this way to come back to the old times, they didn't resolve the problems. And they came in a lot of crises. There was during the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, there was a big crisis, you know. So for example, in Mexico there was a big crisis, in Brazil there was a big crisis, in Argentina was crisis, and this new government, they want to remain in power. You know. Some of this, I'm not talking about really about, I'm trying to give you more information about what's going on in the political side. This new politician, they want to remain in control of the government. And for example, the last crisis was last year in Honduras. Zelaya, who was the president, wanted to reform the constitution in order to be re-elected. So the opposition did a coup d'etat and put a throwaway the Honduras Zelaya. And there was a big crisis within the Americas, because some countries, they say, we are against coup d'etat. Another country, they say no, because this president wants to remain in control of the Honduras country. So it was very difficult for the Americas to resolve this crisis. And finally, you know, Zelaya was admitted in Honduras, but was not admitted to continue being a president. So he is not anymore a president, Zelaya. Well, as a result of the new populist government, we have a very clear statistic. Between 1998 and 2000, the per capita income of Latin America was only 0.2%.
Increase, you mean?
Exactly.
The increase.
This increase, that's correct. Yes. Now, we are trying to see what is on the other hand, what's going on. Which are the rules in which countries can financially prosper? No? Is to innovate, be efficient, and productive. So, in order to the productivity, innovate, increase the productivity, is necessary all this, what is written there. Now, about Chile. Chile had the same problem that as mentioned at the beginning, was a country was trying to protect their own national industry. And this was more stronger when we have a socialist government between 1970 and 1973. You are too young, but there was a president in Chile called Allende. Some people remember Allende. He was elected democratically, but he was a socialist president, and he tried to reform this old system that was very protected in a socialist system, and was a fiasco. I was living in those days, but it's not my duty to tell about story about my country in that way. But finally, in 1973, the military did a coup d'etat, because it was a chaos. Unfortunately for our country, Chile was a chaos, especially in 1973. The economy was not ruling, there was completely no control about the country, and there was a division in our society. Those who were defending the communist government, and the other ones who were against the communist government. Well, so during the socialist government, they did more or less the same as what they did in the other ones. They nationalized copper mines, our main exportation, banking sector, and a lot of private companies were nationalized. And of course, there was a problem in our agriculture system, because there were big